Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers. Oh my gosh.
This is the first episode of 2026.
Dang,
No,
man.
2025. I'm in the
2025. It's
future.
like you went in the Wayback Machine forward.
You
So,
know, I drink and I know things, Mark, as we
yeah,
all
I'll
are
say
very
just
aware.
you've been traveling and all that for the holidays. I get it. I get it. So,
Yes, exploring many
and
wines
and
of
me
the.
with epilepsy, I don't even know what day it is half the
I was
time.
gonna
So,
say, I was
yeah,
gonna bet you that I knew what day it was more than you knew what day it was.
probably. So,
Well, we
no,
hope
I
all of our travelers had amazing holidays.
days. We hope they're not being attacked by unknown drones as that have hit most of the East Coast now. I
What?
think it's the Chinese weather balloon of 2020, late 2024, early 2025. So this
Do I
is
even want to know what you're talking about?
it's just the thing that's been going on. You've been on a trip, so you haven't kept up, but they're these strange drones have been spotted a lot of places, and a lot of the UFO community is up in arms about them because they're giant, they're the size of small cars, and some weird stuff's been filmed. That's just all we can say. It's not worthy of breaking news, I don't think, until we get a little more on it. So
Well, I'm just going to say we have said it's coming for some time, so maybe it's
yeah,
finally coming.
yeah, maybe. I think this is the last gasp of some program that is about to be cut. So they're trying their best to justify themselves or something. Who knows? But
Who? Yeah,
yeah.
really.
But speaking of being cut,
Were we? Why? Okay, what is being cut? I don't even know
well,
what today's episode is about. What are
okay,
we
all right.
doing?
Well, in Florida right now, they are looking at possibly selling off state park areas, right? We saw this happen in Amelia Island, where a few years ago I wrote about it in Eerie, Florida. I wrote a place, there was a legend there about a demon called Wiccademus that
Okay.
was the pet of a little girl. We may have to do a full episode on that, but the problem is it's gone now. It was part of a lost part of a state park. The Eggins Creek Greenway never claimed to have been at this part where the legend was never part of their lands according to them, but we have trails and other things. There were signs there and all this, so obviously it was part of it at one point, but it got bulldozed and is now a housing development.
I hate that. And that,
Yeah.
it's very interesting you bring that up because I'm not saying it doesn't happen other places, but I feel like Florida really is bad about getting rid of its nature. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen other places, but I feel like Florida is especially bad at, like, let's just, I know this is panther wildlife or manatee thing, but let's throw up a hotel here
Yeah,
instead.
we're missing out on some tax dollars, and that's what's about to happen in this amazing park. Now, all right, so I've got to go through a few layers of this story, right,
Okay.
to get to what we're really talking about. So, first thing, we're going to talk about a shipwrecked Quaker. We're going to talk about a top secret military base, and then we're going to talk about an alligator wrestler.
Oh,
Okay.
that was just dizzying. So
Yes.
I feel like,
Florida.
I wasn't the way forward machine.
Yes.
It really is the way back machine, and they just hit the wrong buttons. But are we going in the way back machine?
At one point, we'll be going there a little bit. So, but first, it's Jonathan Dickinson State Park. It's in Hobie Sound, Florida, just off the Jupiter Inlet. It's basically over 10,000 acres and a variety of natural climates over its expanse. It's got the sandpine scrublands, and then it's got some pine flatwoods, mangroves, and then it's got river swamps. And the big thing that goes through it is the Loxahatchee River, and it just kind of snakes through a large portion of the park. And this is the river that was the first designated National Wild and Scenic River in Florida. And just beautiful place. And now Jonathan Dickinson, this is where we're going to bring about our Quaker. We're going to go back in the Wayback Machine to 1696. Okay. So
Okay.
early days of our continent, as far as European exploration goes. And this guy's a Quaker merchant, and he and his family sailed from Philadelphia, were headed to Jamaica, and then they were coming back from Port Royal, and they were on a schooner called the Reformation.
Okay.
And the ship kind of gets separated from its convoy. And then what happens in Florida every year that destroys it? Hurricanes.
Hurricanes?
Yep.
Hurricanes.
So this one came on September 24th, 1696, and crashed his boat kind of near this area.
Okay.
Now, nobody dies, but
what? Really?
A lot of the people were injured and ill in this boat crash, right? And they were discovered by the local tribe of Indians, the Jobe. But Dickinson misspells their names in his journals and calls them the Hobe. And that's where we get the name Hobie Sound.
Okay.
Right? He's let loose a few days later, and he heads to St. Augustine in basically the small boat, the side boat that was salvaged from the Reformation. But he goes through a ton of stuff, right?
Before I just want to say, anybody who will go through a ship being crashed and torn apart by a hurricane and then is willing to immediately get back in a boat again gets mad props by me, because guess what I wouldn't do? That.
Yeah. Now, he goes on to write a journal about his ordeal in 1699, and it's one of those captivity tracks, right, where somebody's been captured by the natives and describing all the things. So it does well enough where he makes a name for himself. He gets elected mayor of the city of Philadelphia twice. So he went on to do well for himself, right?
Well done.
All right. So that's that portion. So now we're going to cut ahead to early 1900s. And there's a man named Vincent Nastokovich. Okay. I'm sure I butchered that.
Mouthful.
It is a Polish immigrant family in Trenton, New Jersey.
Okay.
His parents didn't speak English. So this Vincent and his stepbrother Charles, they would translate for each other, right?
Okay.
And translate for his family. And the boys earned money for their family by trapping animals in New Jersey.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, they're immigrant family. It's what they got to do. When their mother died, Vincent and Charles run away and head west because they hate their dad, right? They're just, dad's terrible. No real story behind it. Just, they've been doing this. Yeah, they've been doing this for their mom. So that's all that matters for them, is they're done with this, right?
Okay.
So all that said, they head and ride boxcars for a while. So they kind of living the hobo life. And they're making money by gambling, and they're still out trapping animals, right?
Okay.
And they eventually wind up in Mexico.
What? How does that happen?
Two brothers, they wind up in Mexico, and they get arrested for gun running.
Oh, that sounds like a life.
Yep. So by this point, they've kind of anglicized their name, right? Because they're tired of Vincent Nastokovich and all that. So one goes by Nelson.
Okay.
That's what they changed their last name to, is Nelson. So Vincent goes by Vincent Nelson, and Charles Nelson. So it's better than their Polish name, they think. They think it'll help them. They jump back on the trains again. Okay. After getting out of Mexico. They were freed shortly after. And they wind up all the way in Florida, just north of Jupiter, in the Hobie Sound area. And they again began hunting and trapping animals with a friend and a partner. And the partner's name is John Dykes. And they all just stayed out here in the swamp areas, and they were trapping animals. And then they would go into Jupiter and sell their furs, sell their animals. And Vince made a name for himself because the dude was 6'4" and around 240 pounds.
That was huge back then.
Yeah. And this guy was famous. He would eat a whole pie for lunch.
Wow.
And one account says he ate like 18 eggs for breakfast. So think Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, right?
I like that you did Gaston because I love Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. I just think it's hysterical because my immediate response to that was, God, the cholesterol. Like, yeah. I probably shouldn't think that way, but when somebody doesn't have any eggs, I'm like, oh, that seems terrible.
I just remember I ate 5 dozen eggs every day to keep large. Now we're going to go to 1931.
Okay.
December. They've been there for a while now.
Yeah.
Vincent's brothers Charles winds up shooting their partner John in the back with a shotgun.
Okay, I don't love that.
And Vince actually testifies against his stepbrother for the murder.
Oh.
Even though he wasn't there at the time, he winds up testifying. And Charles is sentenced to 20 years in prison by Judge C.E. Chillingworth.
His name is Chillingworth?
Chillingworth.
Okay.
Now, Charles vows, when I get out of prison, I'm going to kill the judge and my brother. So Vince now retreats back into the wilds of Florida, all right, to his camp. And it's way up the Luxahatchee River, far away from nearby towns, but still close enough to be able to trade with Jupiter, right? And he's making some decent money. This is the Great Depression now. And he's selling his furs, he's selling his stuff, and land starts going cheap because people are foreclosing everywhere. And he's making some decent money, so he starts buying the land. And who is Vince buying the land against? Well, a lot of times it's Judge Chillingworth, because who's also buying the land.
Okay, so that's weird.
So they kind of become this friendly rivalry in the land market, right? They're both buying land up, but then they start having lunch together. They start becoming buddies.
Okay.
So Vince is now got a name for himself, right? He's this big burly dude, kind of a good looker, according to most people. We've got some pictures of him. We'll put them in the show notes here. And he's got a name now. They start calling him Trapper Nelson.
Okay, so I got to look up a picture of Trapper Nelson. I'm doing Ooh, well, hello, Trapper Nelson.
Yeah.
Hi, Trapper Nelson.
And probably pulling up the gun show.
Yes, it is a gun show.
All right. But
I do declare.
He doesn't really look like what you'd expect here of a trapper, right? We're thinking the guy Gabby Hayes from Gunsmoke or some one of those guys out in the Wild West.
I was expecting a coonskin hat.
Exactly.
He actually kind of reminds me of from the early Tarzan, those kind of movies, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. That's what he kind of reminds me of.
That's exactly what he becomes. So he starts to spruce up his camp, right? He starts putting up fruit trees. And he even starts putting some simple huts around there because some people keep coming to visit him because it's staying out in the wilds, right? And tourists are now starting to flock to Florida for the beaches. And as they're driving down the roads, they would see Trapper Nelson and his trophies for sale in the local markets. So some would start going up the river in a boat to his campsite. And he gets the name, the Wild Man of the Luxahatchee, right?
Okay.
And as you mentioned, Tarzan, he starts banking on Tarzan. So he would meet the boats by swinging out on a vine or a rope, and he would do the Tarzan yell as the boats would come up. And he was renting his little huts. Now, he had built himself a nice big cabin, but he started renting that to others because it was making him money. And so he builds himself a second cabin. And then he starts renting that and makes a third cabin. So he's basically becoming a tourist attraction himself, right? He was originally showing folks around for free, but he learned I can make more money. So he goes to work and he finally builds Trapper Nelson's Zoo and Jungle Garden. And he's selling souvenirs from these animals that he's catching. And he's got wildlife he's keeping caged on the grounds, things he's caught, including an alligator or two. He's living the frontier life, right? So no running water, no electricity. He's eating the animals he's killed. So he knew his guests, though, would like some amenities. So he starts putting in some picnic tables. He put up some grills, right? He's going all out. And
yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. So tourists are flocking to see this zoo, right? And he's all for a modest fee. He's become a local celebrity. He's doing the swing and he's doing the Tarzan yell. So now he's got a new nickname, the Tarzan of the Everglades. Okay. Now, movie stars start coming up from Miami because Miami's trying to become Hollywood East, right? So most famously, Gary Cooper comes up and hangs out with Trapper. Now, here's where some interesting things start happening. Ladies from the highbrow societies of West Palm and Miami and Fort Lauderdale, they start coming up to spend some time with this strapping Trapper Nelson with his gun show, and he wrestles alligators. Well, but he could wrestle a highbrow lady or two.
I was going to say, if I was not very happily married and a highbrow lady and it was 1930, I may take a little pilgrimage to the wilds of Florida.
So he's romancing socialites. He's living the good life in the woods, right? So Nelson's doing great for himself. But war is waging in Europe.
Oh.
Right? And America's about to be drawn in. So to avoid the draft, Trapper goes and marries a local waitress, like immediately.
Oh, that's one way to do it.
Attempt to avoid the draft is the operative word here, because he winds up getting drafted in 1942 right after the wedding. Right?
Oh, well, that didn't go very well, did it?
It didn't work out for him at all.
No.
And he's sent to Texas for basic training.
Oh. Well,
and in Texas, he's there maybe a few weeks in basic training, and it's not for him. But he winds up tearing a leg muscle, and so they send him back to Florida. And they're going to put him, they're going to post him to Camp Murphy, which was built right next to his camp in the Loxahatchee. And he's going to be serving as an MP on this top secret military base.
Okay.
And as soon as he gets home, he finds out his wife's cheating on him. And so a quick divorce, and then he's hanging out at Camp Murphy. Now, Camp Murphy, this is where we're going to get into the secret military thing here. We're going to diverge from Trapper for just a minute here.
Okay.
It's the United States Army Signal Corps establishes Camp Murphy in 1942. It was the home of the Southern Signal Corps School, and it was the base of instruction for this new, very top secret technology at the time. This thing called radar. And at its height, Camp Murphy housed over 1,000 buildings and 6,000 officers and soldiers. And
wow.
Just to train people how to use this new gizmo to stop planes and boats and submarines and all these new weapons of war. It lasted less than 2 years.
Wow.
The camp was deactivated in 1944. So just a couple years of operation, but this secret military base doing all this high classified training, and it's still a lot of the stuff that happened there is redacted. Not, UFO wise, but we're not sure why. So unusual stuff. And Trapper was an MP there. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Now, while this is going on, while his time's there, he reopens his zoo to tourists because what happens is people start coming back from the war, right? The war's over. So now he's renting rowboats. He's renting his overnight cabins. He starts wearing a loincloth. Or his famous swim shorts, right? And he always is wearing a pith helmet, right? Because that's the classic. It's the bring him back alive buck. It's the Tarzan look, right? It's the great white hunter.
But at that time, was it a classic? It doesn't seem like at that time that would have been a classic.
I think it was trying to make itself at the time, right?
Wow.
So
okay.
He's handling snakes. He's wrestling alligators. He's being Trapper Nelson, right? So most of the money that he's making is going to just pay taxes on the 1,000 acres he now owns by the mid 1950s.
That's a lot of.
Yeah, he's been doing this a while now too, right? So
yeah.
Now in 1960, health inspectors come in and they say you can't have people here overnight without bathrooms because he's just been digging latrines because he was military. He's a hobo. He didn't even think about that proper bathroom.
If you're camping too, most of the time people go.
Yeah. Go in the woods. You go in the bushes, right? So
no, that's normal.
Yeah. So, but since he was charging money, health inspectors show up. So he builds them. He builds some restrooms, but the health inspector says, nope, they're not code. So they forced him to close his zoo. And he basically becomes a recluse at this point because he's very distrustful of the government. So
understandably.
Yeah, he's had a rough life. I mean, he was military. He got drafted in military, gets injured instantly, comes home. They keep him as a cop on this secret military base. There's a lot going on here, right? Okay. Yeah. So now everybody's wondering, why is this doesn't sound creepy, Mark? This isn't weird.
Well, I'm assuming this is going somewhere because yeah.
We're still in the Wayback Machine here, right? So don't worry, gang. We're still in the first half. So visitors were still coming to his camp, but he was trying to chase them away. He was discouraging it. So first he starts putting up no trespassing signs, right? He's like, sorry, we're closed. I've been shut down by the government. I don't want to be accountable anymore. When that didn't work, he starts putting up fences for the first time. He never put up fences before. And then he changed his signs to say things like danger, landmines, and other stuff to try to keep people away. All right.
I feel like that probably didn't work for him, but
he stops dressing like the wild man of the Loxahatchee. He starts wearing overalls. He starts growing a beard. And he often would be carrying a 12-gauge shotgun over his shoulder, chasing away intruders. He would just fire it in the air. And I'm like, so now he's turned into what we expected of Trapper Nelson, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Become the caricature. And the locals only see him on his once-a-week visit to pick up mail and to restock the local shops with alligator heads and other trinkets, right? Because he's still catching animals. That's all he can do, right?
Yeah.
So he's no longer able to afford the taxes on his land. So he starts looking for buyers. He'd hoped to sell some to some of his former visitors that had money. He had hopes that they would, he had hope that somebody would buy the land and donate it to the state because he was watching it all get developed, like all the nearby towns and stuff. And he also had other trappers in the area that he wasn't getting along with that wanted his land, and he didn't want them to get it.
Yeah.
But he's realizing his enemy list is getting bigger because he's also got these jealous husbands that are in the dozens from his previous guests who had visited. So
This doesn't sound like it's going very well at all.
no, and then his half brother Charles gets released from prison,
Ah,
and so right like a few days after that, his best buddy in the world, Judge Chillingworth, is gunned down by a shotgun. Now, Charles, his Vince's half brother, was a suspect, but was innocent. It could not have been him. He was out of town. But Chillingworth had actually been killed by a gunman hired by a fellow judge.
okay.
So, wow, right? that's a whole other case there. But so July 1968, Trapper was supposed to meet a friend of his, and he didn't show up. So the friend became worried. Trapper had been complaining of poor health. He said he had some stomach pain. So Trapper, he didn't trust the government. He also didn't trust doctors. So he wanted nothing to do with this. But when his friend gets out to the campsite, everything's well until he gets into Nelson's cabin.
Oh.
Nelson had been shot in the stomach by his own shotgun.
Yikes. How do you do that?
The coroner rules it a suicide.
Okay.
And the sheriff agrees.
No.
Now, most of the locals say, no, foul play. Got to be the brother. Got to be something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, suicide is possible, but basically, yeah, think about it. You basically have to bend over your own shotgun to shoot yourself in the stomach. You know, some of his friends did say that he would rather die than be an invalid. And his recent stomach pains maybe added to his concerns. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. I can't. I mean, how do you even do that? How do you get? Okay, I know we need to take a break. We need to take a break.
I need a quick break, but just think about that as we go into the break. How would how that happened? How you could unalive yourself that way? But why would you unalive yourself that way? But anyway, and then we're gonna get weird, as if this wasn't weird enough.
I was gonna say this is totally freaking weird, but we'll be right back.
Destiny Beard, the lyrical soprano who will haunt your dreams. With her alluring melodies and intricate harmonies, this dark siren of wistful song shall capture your soul and lead you into the night. Check out Destiny's new single, The Haunting Is Over, with international musicians Sam Haines and Gary Bennett, as well as her other musical works at destinybeard.com.
Okay, we're back. So there is no way to easily shoot yourself in the stomach with a shotgun, especially a normal shotgun. They're super long, and I don't care how dexterous you are with your toes. Like, you cannot unalive yourself that way.
No, I mean, it would take some doing, right? I'm sure you could jury rig something, you could do something like that, but no, this is in the wood. This is in a swamp of Florida, right on the edge of the scrubland forest, and yeah, that's some work. So
yeah, that's not happening.
Now, remember that Camp Murphy?
Yeah,
right, a military camp. It had closed. So all that land, which borders his land, had just been sold to the state.
Yeah.
Right? And they were now making Jonathan Dickinson State Park based on that old Quaker, because that was the area where he landed too. So now it's this huge state thing.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after his death, the state traded more land elsewhere in the state to Nelson's nephew and heir.
Okay.
They're like, we'll take Trapper's land and his zoo to incorporate it into the state park, because You said he wants it protected. He wants it saved
Uh-huh.
for generations. And fine, here, you can have some of this land elsewhere in Florida rather than just buy it from you, eminent domain style. We'll do this for you.
Okay.
So they got it basically for here's some other swampland that we don't need that isn't going to be a state park.
Wow.
So Trapper's family still gets something out of this, right? Now, the site is now part of Jonathan Dickinson State Park. Camp Murphy is pretty much incorporated into it. It is now Trapper Nelson Zoo Historic District and Interpretive Site.
Wow, that is a mouthful.
Yes. And it was damaged by arsonists and vandals before it opened to the public, but it has been restored and it is protected by the park. Right.
Okay.
Now, people had been coming out there. The reason it was so damaged is everybody knew Trapper did not trust the government. Trapper did not trust banks. They knew he was making money. They knew he had money. And some people had even seen him pay for money in jars covered in mud. So immediately the thought is, he's buried money out there. So,
oh my God, how did this become a buried treasure story?
like I said, there's so many twists and turns in this story,
This
right?
is ridiculous, buried treasure. Okay, keep going.
So
I love it.
everybody's out there trying to, that's one of the reasons why the state was so keen on being able to get it. Was it they were looking for money? No, they were worried that people were going to destroy it trying to find his lost money. So it isn't until 1984 that park rangers accidentally discovered Nelson's treasure, right?
Okay.
It was in his chimney while they were doing restoration work. They found a cache of 5,000 coins that totaled over $1,800. And they all dated from the 1890s to the 1960s.
Well, that would make them actually quite valuable.
That's pretty valuable. And it was a pretty sizable chunk to begin, especially for back then, $1,800 back then. But no more treasure's been found, supposedly. They've searched the hell out of the site. But, do we know? Do we really know?
Okay, nobody listening think that it would be a good idea to go treasure hunting there because it's not.
Right. It's not. You can't. It's a state park, and they do not allow access after dark. You can camp nearby.
Okay.
Right. But now, here's where we get our Eerie travels, right?
I was going to say, when does this start becoming,
okay,
other than the weird military base and the undisclosed things happening and like just Florida swamps and skunk ape, did he ever kill a Bigfoot? Anyway, okay, go ahead.
I know, right? Yeah. There are reports that people have seen Trapper out there.
Still?
To this day.
Oh, wow.
People see him. Now, people sometimes see him as the grizzled old man Trapper with the shotgun saying, "Get off my land. I don't want anything to do with you." And then some people see him as the strapping young man holding a snake or an alligator. So he's got a ghost alligator or a ghost snake that he's holding.
Oh, wow.
And then he's like, "Hey, come see my stuff." But generally, if you're a pretty girl, he looks like that. If you're a dude, he looks like the grizzled old man with the shotgun. So he's
selective.
He's selective about his appearance, right? Now the camp is open to the public, but to get there, you have to get a boat tour from Jonathan Dickinson State Park. They have a recreational center there, an educational center there that goes twice a day, and you can go see his cabin and some of the other things. You can picnic out there just like so many did is at one of his old picnic tables. But okay, now here's where I come in. When I was first
almost busy this entire story. So we have a ghost, we have the state park. You can visit the state park. Okay. Yep. Okay.
All right. So Eerie, Florida had come out, and I was working on the follow-up book, and I got an email. I hadn't even heard of Trapper Nelson much at this point. I think I read about him in passing when I was doing some research on Fort Lauderdale or Miami. But I got an email from a lady who said she was one of Trapper Nelson's daughters, that her mom had been one of his many tangled, sordid love affairs, had gone up and visited him from the Fort Lauderdale days. Thing is, her birth date was 2 years after he had died.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Do some math there.
Now, as we all know, Erica is not good at the maths. We're all aware that Erica has had some.
You have had children.
I have, and
wasn't there like a 9-month window?
There's that. There's also, making sure the person you choose to have children with is alive.
Yes. So
unless it's a weird Twilight scenario. Look how I worked Twilight into this story.
I knew you were going to.
Hello, Stacy. Just throw it out. Okay, continue.
So no, mother swears that she didn't know that he had passed and had gotten a call to go visit him. She had visited him many times before, back in the day.
How are you doing?
And so she got up there somehow on a boat, went to visit him, spent the night with him, and then found out she was pregnant a month or so later.
I like that very PG version of how that went. I appreciate that.
I didn't want to go into. I mean, I didn't get. This was from the daughter, so I didn't get the graphic details from the mom.
Well, no, obviously, but I just think it's
went to her grave swearing that Trapper Nelson was the father of her daughter.
Okay, so please tell me a DNA test proves this.
She has not done a 23andMe as far as I know. I will reach back out and find out, because I never even thought about that. But that's just the story her mother had told her. And she had heard other stories about Trapper's ghost being out there. So,
well, that gives a whole new meaning to the movie Ghost, because if ghosts are now able to impregnate people, that's like a whole different level.
I remember that lady who got some grief for marrying a pirate that supposedly looked like Johnny Depp, and she married the painting of Johnny Depp, and then found out the ghost was cheating on her. What?
I remember that, but I could swear, was it in the 90s? Wasn't there a story about a woman who said that she had gotten pregnant with a ghost or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, this is all right out of Weekly World News type stuff, right?
This is nuts.
But this lady wrote to me about it, asked me if I knew about it, and I was like, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about it. So I start researching, finding out all this stuff, and wow, it's a great story. It's a murder mystery. Is it? It sounds
like a murder mystery that will never be solved, since they went, oh yeah, suicide. Weird.
Yeah, done. All good. The brother couldn't have done it, even though he was in town, even though he had come to visit. And
even though he said he was going to do exactly that. Even though he said he was going to
kill the judge and kill the thing. Well, the judge was obviously killed by this hired gunman of this other judge, but even that case was never convicted. So Chillingworth and Trapper Nelson, both their murders or unalives or
unaliving,
are questionable, right? And Trapper Nelson's treasure may still be out there, because people swear he had jars of dollar bills. Now his cache of coins was in a little military box, so I don't think that was the bulk of his treasure.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Now, here's where the sad thing is right now, Trapper Nelson's is part of Jonathan Dickinson State Park. Jonathan Dickinson State Park is in threat of being downsized by the state of Florida. They want to get rid of sections of the park because it's huge. It takes up a large portion of southeast Florida. and that could be developed. It could be nice property for projects and cane sugar and other things, but it's a state park. A lot of Boy Scouts go there. They still use Camp Murphy buildings for Boy Scout camps. They still use a lot of these historical places, and Trapper Nelson's place. People boat out there twice a day. Why are we getting rid of it? Why would we want to get rid of it?
This is just back to the whole thing that we need to stop destroying our natural lands and stuff, and especially in Florida. Like, no, don't get rid of national parks and things like that, and especially historic locations like this. Like, why do we do that? Just bulldoze it to put something else up.
It's crazy. Now Nelson's place had a cage for wild cats. It had a cage for alligators. It had a cage for boars. It had a cage for it just said animals. I'm assuming that would have been like probably just some of the smaller mammals and stuff that he caught. He did have snake terrariums, but they weren't glass enclosures. I'm trying to figure out how he kept snakes in barbed wire fences. But
maybe he did chicken wire, because some of those bigger snakes you could keep in chicken wire. Not that that's recommended, travelers, these days, but
no. And again, it was restored, so we don't really know 100%. There are photos of it, but most people were taking photos of him.
Can't imagine why.
I don't know. So it is an interpretive site, right? When you go there. Now, ghost hunting teams love to go out there. They cannot go after dark, but you can get pretty close. Just across the river is where the main campsite is. And people over there often hear strange noises coming from over in the park. Now, some people hear big cat noises, so which I guess there are still panthers in that area.
I hope so.
I just got chimed in from the Ghost of Carrie there that there are some in that area, but they try to do thermal across the water to see if there's anything, and they get nothing. So some of his animals may be there in spirit too. It's just a really wonderful place to visit. I cannot recommend it enough.
Well, Travelers, it sounds like somewhere you should go before they destroy it. So if you get
and get down there and make sure that they don't. If enough people go there, they won't, right? That's part of the thing. So now the educational center there is called the Elsa Kimball Environmental Education and Research Center. And it was an invaluable resource to us. They have so many pictures of Trapper Nelson. They have so many things. They have a big display on him there and all that. But it also talks all about the ecosystems there, the unique history of the place. It's very, very cool. They've got some of the originals of Jonathan Dickinson's accounts. It's an amazing visit spot on your trip, and where you need to check in if you're going to camp out for the night and all that. You can go to Camp Murphy and you can read what they have declassified, and you can visit some of the buildings. There's still a few buildings left. They bulldozed a bunch of them and let it restore to nature. Just wild place to visit. Definitely worth it. Carrie loves the environmental center because they have some pet snakes and some pet animals. When we went, one of the snakes had been on a walkabout and had escaped for a couple weeks. They couldn't find him until they opened a closet, and he was hiding up top somewhere. He'd found some place nice and cozy to sleep.
I love that.
Yeah. Carrie and I have had that happen once or twice with ours. Most snake owners know that does happen occasionally. But man, what an amazing place. I can't get over it. And then the idea that, maybe romantic encounter. I mean, some of you ladies got those ghostly romance books for Christmas. Yeah. So now maybe there's some truth to it. We could move them from paranormal romance fiction to paranormal romance nonfiction.
Oh my gosh. This story is completely wild. Definitely check out our wonderful picture of Trapper Nelson, because how you doing? And Mark, with all of that said, I can't wait to hear how you lead us out.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you again, travelers, for everything. Thanks for sticking with us for another year. We are moving on into 2025. Oh my gosh. And we've got a lot ahead for you. Please keep checking eerietravels.com. That's where you can send us your listener tales, your listener questions. That's also where you can see where we're going to be. If we are going to be doing appearances this year, we've got a few announcements coming soon. The new novel books will be out there. I don't know how else to describe them.
No, they're new travel guides that we're Eerie travel guides. So we're doing our first one, which is the Dark Side of the Smoky Mountains. That will hopefully be up in early January for pre-order.
Yeah, hopefully around now or soon. So keep an eye on the website. That's where it'll be, but it'll be available in wherever you can get your local books. We'd love it if your friendly local bookstore would order it from their usual locations. They can get it too. But also that'll be where we'll post any future book signings that we're going to be doing. So when that comes out. All that said, thank you again to our Patreon supporters who throw a few bucks here at us, and we appreciate every dime. It keeps us broadcasting and keeps us researching and going to more places and giving you more Eerie travels. So when you're out on the Luxahatchee and you're taking that boat ride out to Old Trapper Nelson's Island, just think of the past. Enjoy as you're traveling into the primordial Florida swamps and just looking at this wonderful world of nature. And if you hear a yell on a vine and that old great Tarzan call, that isn't an old swimmer, that isn't an old creature of habit, but if you're a boy, watch out for. If you're a girl, watch out. You may have something else to worry about. And we will see you on the other side.